Good afternoon, hello, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today on day 6 of our Virtual Island Summit 2022. I know it's been a long week of networking and absorbing and sharing and coming up with solutions. And I really want to thank you for coming here one more time with us as we continue our Virtual Island Summit. I am Nisa Constantine Bobra, the Creative Director at Island Innovation from St. Lucia, so sending you some sunshine from all over the world. And today we are going to be speaking with Rob Wallace from Power52. But before we jump into that, I just want to give you a little bit of background about Island Innovation. We are a creative agency as well as a global network pushing forward innovation and encouraging sustainability throughout our island nations. We span over 500 islands. Please visit us at www.islandinnovation.co for some more information about our products and our services. I am really excited about our session today as we sit with CEO of Power52, Rob Wallace, and there's going to be so much learning. I am sure that you're going to enjoy it. Just before we get into that session, however, I'm encouraging you to use the chat to say hello, to introduce yourself, and let us know where you're joining us from. In addition to that, a poll will be appearing on screen shortly, and I'm encouraging you again to participate and let us know what industries you are joining us from, what islands, what countries, what part of the world you're coming in and listening with us today, and we're excited to have you. So please feel free to use that poll to share some more information. Another word about the chat, we will be using it for our Q&A session. So feel free as well to post questions and we will do our best to answer as much as possible, as many as possible. We also have a Q&A box. I'm asking you to use that as well so that we can get your feedback and get Rob to answer some of these questions as well. The poll is on screen now, so I'm encouraging you to fill it out, to let us know where you're from. Let us know what industries as well. All right, we have a whopping 29% of you from the Caribbean as well as from Europe, so it's a tie. From Europe and the Caribbean, we have a lovely showing of 14% from North America as well. Hello, welcome, so excited to have you. Great, so let's jump into it. I'm going to introduce you to Rob Wallace. Rob brings more than 15 years of global experience as an electrical and energy engineer, project manager, and business consultant. His expertise, hi Rob, his expertise are in development, renewable energy, as well as training. He has traversed countries in North America, Africa, and the Caribbean. And Rob has developed and built more than 200 megawatts of solar and wind projects and has worked in the power market, focusing on frequency response, energy arbitrage, and battery storage. All great things, all great things. But what I want to introduce today, Rob, is the great work that you are doing in the BVI and islands that you hope to spread into. Everyone, this is Rob Wallace. Rob, floor is yours. Tell us about your project in the BVI.
Sure. So let me give you a quick backdrop. First of all, happy Saturday. I appreciate everyone jumping on the weekend. I know we've had long weeks, but super excited to talk about what we're doing. I also have one of my partners online, Jeremy Newsom, who's also watching, and just super excited to talk about what we do at Power52. But I think it's important to give you a quick backdrop on how we got to the Caribbean, right? Because my background, like Nessa said, is in electrical engineering, did solar for a long time, done a ton of projects, over 250 megawatts of projects, mostly for military installations for satellite communications. So a lot for the government, a lot for critical infrastructure here in the US. Fast forward to 2015, as many of you have seen, there was the riots in Baltimore. And what you saw from that experience was they highlighted these kids, right, that were standing on police vehicles and rioting and throwing rocks, and the media was calling them thugs and all this other stuff. But what we saw was a generation that had lost hope, right? Not thugs, but they lost hope. And so myself, Ray Lewis, and Cherie Brooks started Power 52 Foundation, the 52 after Ray Lewis's number, to train veterans, high school men and women, and high school, and returning citizens how to build, construct, and maintain solar. So now give them a skill that they could take to actually join and create in this industry. And so as part of that training, they got their NABCEP, they got their NCCER, and they got their OSHA. Fast forward, we trained 1,000 people, 98% graduation, 82% placement in the industry, zero backgrounds in engineering, zero backgrounds possibly in college. So we gave them the skills they needed to be successful in that space. Fast forward to 2017, we had the hurricanes in the Caribbean, and we were invited down to the Caribbean to help rebuild the infrastructure in British Virgin Islands after the storm because there was no resiliency. And what we came up with was this: the way you power a nation is by empowering its people. It's not by just coming in and bringing the resources, fixing everything and leaving. It's coming in and investing in the people, investing in the culture, investing in education, so that now the resources you need to rebuild your country are on island, right? You're self-sustainable. And so the government loved that model. They hired us to implement this model. And so we started the Caribbean Energy Institute to train returning citizens, vets, and high school men and women, once again, how to build and construct their own systems. Graduated 40 people, and now those folks are the ones that are building projects in the Caribbean. So we have a project now for the island of Anegada, which will be the first 100% sustainable island, I believe, in the world, that will be powered by solar plus battery storage. But the key is it's going to be built by the graduates of the training program, not by bringing in outside resources from the US or other countries. The folks that we trained, of which 1/3 were returning citizens right out of prison, are now the ones that will be building this project for the country, now rebuilding the infrastructure, now investing in their own economic empowerment. And so because of that, we have 2 projects in the BVI, which we're building using these individuals. And now they will be the foundation of what we do and the training that we do there. So that's a quick segue kind of into BVI. We're also looking down at St. Lucia, done some work in St. Eustatia. We're looking at St. Kitts and also St. Martin. But the key takeaway from this is this: you invest in the people, right? You power a nation by powering the people, empowering the people with resources, skills, and knowledge they need to be successful. And that's our goal with Power 52.
That's brilliant. So, Rob, I'm curious. I've heard of, you said it, you've done it in the Caribbean. Do you think this is a model that can work in other islands, like in the Pacific Islands and across the world?
Hands down. And here's why. So now I'm putting on my engineering hat, right? A lot of the issues that islands face is a couple of things. One, access to fuel, right? So after a storm, it's hard to get bunkers or oil into some of these island nations because it's a storm, right? And so what do you do to quickly make sure you have resiliency? You can turn the power back on. So BVI is just a model for any island. You got to have infrastructure, you got to have battery storage, and you have to have local resources that can reinitiate and recommission the systems immediately. So we're talking 24 to 48 hours. If you pay attention to what happened in Puerto Rico and a lot of areas where you have high flooding, the deaths that you see are not because of the storm. They're because of the aftermath of the storm, by not being able to get clean water, not being able to have medical attention, not being able to get access to medicine and clean materials. So it's not necessarily the storm that kills people, it's the aftermath. And that's why it's so important that you have on-site resources to reestablish that power, which is essential to resiliency. And so this model will work anywhere in the world. The good thing about the Caribbean is there's more sun, right? So one thing you have to take into consideration, the more sun you have, the faster you can recharge your system. However, if I'm building a system that's further away from the equator, I just need to build more solar. Same amount of storage, but add more solar so that I can fill this bathtub, right, which we call a battery storage system, faster. So quick analogy for those who are not technical. Imagine a bathtub. Everyone has a bathtub, hopefully has seen a bathtub. The water coming into the bathtub is your solar farm. So how fast that water comes in is how much solar you have. The bathtub itself is the battery storage. So if you have a small bathtub, it'll fill faster. Bigger bathtub, it takes longer to fill. And the drain is the load that comes from that system. So depending on how much power your country needs, your island needs, is going to dictate how much time you have before you have to refill that bathtub, right? So in areas where you need to refill quickly, what do? Add more solar. The second thing you can do is reduce your load, energy efficiency, better weatherization, high efficient equipment, LED lighting. All these things shrink your drain size. So now that the batteries you have and the storage you have can last longer. And so you can play with all three of these to find out what works best for your country.
Thanks for that analogy. It's sometimes so hard to grasp and understand how that whole solar energy thing works, especially if you're not into, the technical aspects of it. So thanks for not using too much jargon and really bringing it down for us. The other thing that we have sometimes a grasp but understanding, or even one of the myths that we've heard, is that solar power is expensive. We cannot afford it. I want you to either debunk or validate that myth for us, Rob.
Sure. So let me start by saying this, and I'll probably get in some trouble. The goal of the utility is to charge you the most they can for electricity with the maximum cost, right, of the retail rate with the minimum cost of the wholesale rate, which is what they generate for. So if they can generate electricity for 5 cents or 7 cents, but are charging 30, then they make a lot of money, right? So what solar does is it brings that 30-cent cost per kilowatt hour down to 14, down to 11, down to 10. And so it reduces the margin of utilities. And since the reason why I say that is that because of that, there's 3 things that have to happen when you bring renewable energy to an island. One, you have to have local resources, local infrastructure, local individuals who are trained to implement and install the system. 30% of the cost is labor. So when you have to bring someone in from another country, another region, you're paying that cost of them, plus their per diem, plus their travel, plus their whatever, into your solar costs, right? The second thing you have to have is access to equipment. And one of the things this COVID world, post-COVID world has done is now you have international access. Just like we're doing now, we're talking to folks internationally, same thing for equipment. So no longer are you bottlenecked by where you can get equipment from. So that brings the cost in, right? And then the last piece, which is the heaviest lift, is policy. There has to be policy in your country that allows for net metering, right? That allows for credits for your kilowatt hours, right? And in my personal opinion, the utility should credit you the same amount that they charge you for the power. However, in a lot of places, they'll charge you 30 cents and they'll give you 4 cents for your exact same kilowatt hour power that you put on the grid. So policy is so important. That's why we spend a lot of time lobbying and educating folks on how to structure programs that make sense. Otherwise, you won't have adoption. You'll have folks that say, oh, it's too expensive. I'm not getting enough credits. I'm not getting my carbon credits. And you're right. Without that policy in place, it's very tough. But the piece that we eliminate is labor. If you can drop the labor cost, you'll save 1/3 of what it should cost you to install these systems. And so that's where we focus.
Lovely. So I wanted to just backtrack a little bit. As you mentioned, policy. What do we need, or what would you recommend? What do we need from our policymakers, our regulators? Because I'm sure, for instance, in St. Lucia, our local Lucilec is not going to be too happy that everybody's embracing solar panels, and all of a sudden we're just we're doing this instead. So what do we need from our policymakers, et cetera, to embrace this change?
So I'm going to tell you a secret while we're on this call, because the good thing is I can only see you, Nessa, so I'm not paying attention to anything else. So from that perspective, I can say what I think. The biggest, what I found from my experience, the best way to get adoption in these types of programs is to lead with the training. It's hard for a politician to say no when you're creating jobs, having economic impact, and taking folks that were otherwise left behind or left out and providing for a way to create a career in economic empowerment for themselves. It's a hard argument for any politician. It's an easy argument if we say we just want to come in and build solar and reduce the cost. The utility is going to battle you all the time. And they have unlimited access to capital. So there's no amount of lobbying, lawyers, so on and so forth. So my advice would be focus on the workforce development and economic impact piece of it. Then the policy piece follows. Then the net metering policy follows, because now you have folks who are trained who they can't say no to. Now you have your constituents who now you voted for you, that are saying, hey, we need help so we can take care of our families. We need this bill passed. And it's a different conversation than hey, let's just build some solar. So that would be my advice. Lead with the training, whether it's us or anyone else. Focus on the youth, focus on the people, and then the rest of the pieces will fall in place.
Sounds great. So Rob, just as we wrap up, and I'm reminding everyone to please use the Q&A session to ask any question. What's the next step for Power 52? Where are you heading? I know that there's talks of St. Lucia, but where are you looking, and what are some of the projects coming up that we should be looking out for as well?
That's a good one. We're doing a lot. My partner, Jeremy Newsom, is on here. We have schools opening currently in Chicago, in Boston, all 5 boroughs in New York, Mississippi, because of what the U.S. policy has done is created a huge incentive for workforce development and apprenticeship programs. So one, we're doing that. 2, though, my heart is for education. Right? I believe the key to economic empowerment is education. And so our goal under our company is to make sure that we provide our education platform across the world. So if you have individuals who want to be trained, we can train them. And the beautiful part about that is we do both hybrid, in-person, and virtual training, right? So beyond just, hey, we don't have a trainer here, we can do the theory virtually, and then we send a team over to do the lab and the practical pieces in person. So now you have folks trained. The last thing I would say is this. I mean, ultimately, our vision is to bless 1 billion people, right? We are trying to make sure that 1 billion people benefit not only from this renewable energy sector, but also from rebuilding themselves. So every class that we teach, we start with a power principle, right? Keep your dreams clearer than your thoughts. Love your neighbor. Respect your flag, because we believe that until you can change a person's heart, nothing you teach them will stick. And so we spend a lot of time on the wraparound pieces as well as the technical piece. So to your point, our goal is to take our platform, what we've done in BVI and looking to do in St. Lucia and St. Kitts and St. Eustatia and St. Martin, and expand it not only into the Caribbean, but across the world. We all are in this together. We all have a planet we need to take care of. And we all are seeing more storms, hotter summers, floods. We just saw what happened was it Pakistan or was Pakistan, I believe. 1/3 of the country is underwater, right? From ice caps melting. So global warming is real. And if we don't fix this problem, our great-grandkids and our great-great-grandkids aren't going to have a place to live here. And so our focus is how to make sure we spread that mission so people are self-sustainable and that they're also energy efficient as we build out this new renewable economy.
Great stuff, Rob. Thank you. I have 2 questions in the Q&A box. I'm going to ask Olivia Coursier is asking about defining guidelines. Olivia, if you could expand on that a little bit so that we can understand which guidelines you're referring to. But there's also a question from Robert McKay. Is there a bigger energy resource that is green and sustainable than solar? He says he thinks there is. Do you think? What do you think, Rob?
Besides God, there is that's obvious. There's a lot of different renewable technologies that are very efficient, work very well. A lot of it just depends upon the application. But I will say this. I believe that solar is the most dependable source right now, right? Because the economy, there's incentives in place for the programming. It's easy to install. So we're not talking about hydrogen cells or nuclear plants. We're talking plug in a DC panel, run it through a combiner box into an inverter, you're putting out electricity. Any hut, any village, any boat, anywhere can do that. And that's one of the good things about solar, in my opinion, that is easily accessible and it's easy to train folks to install. But I agree, there are better and more efficient power sources. I don't think that everyone has access to those same resources, but I do think they're out there.
We also had another question from someone asking how long the training takes.
Excellent question. The training takes 13 weeks. It's quick, 450 hours, blood in, blood out. And during that time, you have your theory, you have your practical hands-on piece, you have what's called a solar boot camp, which is a week-long program where you essentially build an entire 2 kilowatt system and then decommission it. And then there's 4 weeks of on-the-job training. So we actually put you on a real multi-megawatt project so they can learn both small residential systems and large commercial systems. That way, wherever they go, they have the skills to install and decommission anywhere. And so it's 13 weeks, it's quick. We try and do about 3 cohorts a year per region.
Awesome. That does sound very quick. So I'm just curious. So you're talking about people with absolutely no background necessarily.
None.
And in 13 weeks, you have them ready to install, take care, and maintain solar panels.
It's crazy, right?
That's crazy.
So part of the benefit is, like I said, I've been in energy now almost 15 years of just energy, electrical engineering, over 20 years. But when we deliver the curriculum, we cut out all the fat. Everything that you don't need to know, we worry about that for another time. Our focus is to make sure you can get your NABCEP, which is National Association of Certified Energy Practitioners. Make sure you have your construction certification and your safety. And those are the basics to get you in the field. Now, you're always going to have continued education. You're always going to have opportunities to do more safety, to go into maybe sales, go into design. But our job is, how do we get you from where you are to where you're making money? Because what you have is individuals who are starving, right? Who possibly can't take care of their families, who are considering going back to selling drugs, considering going back to robbing people. So you have to find a way to get them from nothing to something quickly, at least so we can right the ship. Once we get the ship level, then we can begin to do other things, to add on other training and teen education, so on and so forth. But our goal was to get them on their feet first.
Got you. We have a very thought-provoking question in the chat, in the Q&A section. Why not try getting energy from waves or the wind? Why focus on solar?
Great question. So one of the systems that we did in Liberia was called an HRES, Hybrid Renewable Energy System. And it was a combination of both wind and solar, because typically when it's windy, it's not sunny. And when it's sunny, it's not windy. One of the benefits, though, from the island nations is there's always usually some wind, right? So in some of the systems we actually combine both solar and wind to make sure that we can use both resources, because both of them feed into a battery storage system the exact same way. So that's a great point. I'm not very familiar with the wave technology. I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure if it's developed the way that wind and solar has, but I do think wave technology would be something to consider as well.
Great. Thank you, Rob. That was really, generally, I think all the questions have been answered. Again, I'm pushing, I see people putting questions in the chat. It's a little difficult for me to acknowledge them. So if you could move them over to the Q&A, that would be great. One more, someone is asking, as a prospective investor, how can one make use of renewable energy in St. Lucia, more specifically solar energy?
As a specific investor, so you're saying how does the model look for investment? Is that correct?
Is that what you're asking? Can you just confirm, Neve? Are you asking how the model can be used for investment? Can you confirm that question? And I'm still hoping that Olivier explains to us what he means by defining guidelines, because I'm sure there's something there that we're not understanding. So Olivier.
Let me touch on the financing question from an investment perspective. The systems that we build in the Caribbean produce double-digit post-tax unlevered returns within 13 months. So that tells you how good of an investment it is. And the reason why is because the cost of electricity is so high on any island nation, right? You figure in the States, we're looking at 7 to 6 cents per kilowatt hour of electricity in terms of the cost. And the utility in the Caribbean, it's about 33 cents. The benefit, though, is when you're closer to the equator, you produce more electricity. So the same system I build in Massachusetts will produce half of what it produces in the Caribbean, but costs the same to install. So you tell me, where's the best place to make your investment? It's going to be in the Caribbean. It's going to be in places where you have high intensity, or what's called a high production factor. And so the closer you are to the equator, there's more hours of sun, which means your return on investment goes up.
Rob, this was insightful. It's not enough time, and there's so much that we could learn from you. And if you want to just redirect people to your website to let them know where they can learn more about your projects and how to get involved, please do so.
Sure. So the best way to reach me is to go to www.robert, R-O-B-E-R-T, Daniel, D-A-N-I-E-L, Wallace, W-A-L-L-A-C-E.com. That's the best way. And on there, it talks about the renewable energy projects we've done. It talks about the training program. And then it also talks about our philanthropic efforts, how we give back, trainings we sponsor, the power principles, and so on and so forth. So that's probably the best way to reach us.
Thank you. Rob Saturday, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. It is an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure that we'll get more opportunities to speak about the renewable energy and what you're doing in the Caribbean, and hopefully transcend it to the other islands around the world. Thank you again. Just as we wrap up, I want to remind everyone that this is not the end. We do have one more day of the Virtual Island Summit, and tomorrow I'm inviting you to join Jennifer Hosklin Gibbons, co-founder of Palau's Legacy Project. She speaks about Palau's bounce back from the pandemic and how they're rebuilding their tourism sustainably. Please join her. I'm also asking you to go and love us on Instagram. You can find us at _Island Innovation. Again, please put in the _Island Innovation. You can find us there. Please give us some likes. We're also asking for some feedback. Let us know how the Virtual Island Summit has been going, what you think, and how we can improve. Thank you for your participation, everyone. Thank you for your feedback. And I definitely invite you to join us tomorrow as we continue with our Virtual Island Summit.